Good morning, good afternoon and good evening to our truly global network. I can see some early birds joining us. Hi Stacey, hi Martin. And while we're warming up, we'll just let everyone join in. And if you want to drop your location in the chat, we'll get you featured on our interactive map. So Stacey, what time is it for you over there? It's a little bit later. I'm Steph. For those of you that don't know me, I'm based in York in England, and I am Scopism SIAM Community Manager. So it's nice to bring you all together, whether you're interested in SIAM or you are a professional practitioner, you're very much in the right place. 4 o'clock, Stacey, nice. Yes, Adam, it's a little bit later, 7 o'clock in Sydney. So yeah, if anyone else is joining, feel free to drop your location in the chat and we'll get you featured. Hello everyone, so I'm back again. Nice to see more of you joining. And we know the SIAM community is strong in Australia because of our community members. So we launched the Scopism SIAM community in July with around 500 members. And by the end of the first year, we hit 1,500. So we tripled that. And after year one, we had 2,500. We've actually now grown to 3,500 members. So it'd be great if we could get all of you on the call today, but I appreciate some of you will be watching on catch up. So please drop your location in, whether you're watching live with us or you're watching back today. We've also got a number of members across a number of countries. So we've got 103 countries total in our Scopism SIAM community. If we could compete with that, please drop it in the chat and we'll get you featured on the interactive map. Let's see if we can get more red pins than blue ones today. Not only that, we also have a number of different industries. So SIAM is not just in IT. We have now over 14 industries and more. A lot of people stating that they work in other industries, but we have finance, healthcare, all sorts of different things, manufacturing, it's endless. So yeah, please share any information you like with us today. We've got a couple of minutes still until we go live. Keep dropping the locations in the chat. I can see we've got Shiva with us, who will be hosting the SIAM social over in the community after this. And that's for everybody. So you can see on the screen there, we've got people at various different stages in their SIAM journeys. So whether you're brand new to it, you're interested in it, or you've been working in it for years, we have a whole host of people in there. So we hope you join the session that we're running today. And after this, we will also be going over to the informal social where you can have a little bit more of a chat about it as well.
Thank you so much, Steph. So proud to be part of the Scopism community. And welcome everybody to SIAM in Action. Thank you so much for joining me. I am Neha Jain, and I'm thrilled to bring to you this new show. It is a 6-episode podcast series, SIAM in Action, with real stories from real people. Here we plan to do a deep dive into practical application of service integration and management. And this show is a journey, and this is our journey, your and my journey, in discovering how SIAM navigates through the modern IT demands, through insightful conversation with the real-world practitioners. And each month, we will unpack critical facets of SIAM. We will start from the strategic impact of SIAM on how does it bring business value. 2, we will move into how SIAM plays a critical role in shaping sustainable and responsible AI-based IT operations. So get ready for actionable insights and real-world lessons. Let's get started with our episode 1 here, the leadership perspective. And on that, today we have a beautiful panel of guests joining us. We'll start with Alta. Alta, thanks for joining us. Alta is a seasoned IT SM leader. She is passionate about aligning IT with business goal. And as a leader of a cross-functional services, she collaborates with diverse set of customers from various industries. And she emphasizes on the best practices of governance. And with a degree in food sciences and a master's in ITSM, she is the expert to run the healthy anatomy of humans as well as IT. So thank you for joining us here, Alta.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and thanks for introducing me. I'm really looking forward to sharing my experience and views with you. So thank you, Nia.
Great. Moving to next, this award-winning tech leader, he wears a dual hat on his head. He has the customer perspective as well as the SIAM provider perspective. He is the regional engagement director who helps in transforming business technology with measurable impact. He is the one who loves working in high pressure situation, demonstrating leadership and proving success in every transformation activity. Welcome on board, Adam.
Thanks, Neha. Thanks, team. Welcome, everyone. Really great to be here. Really excited about sharing some of these amazing stories and finding some big rocks to lift with you all. So thank you.
Looking forward to it, Adam. Our next guest, imagine 30 years of building bridges between human needs and business success. And that's Ian Clark, a director who's not just seeing the evolution of service management, but he is the one who's shaping it. Thanks for joining us, Ian.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you to the esteemed panel for joining us, and I'm really looking forward to today's session. Thank you.
And let's bring in the most important one, Barry. Thanks for joining us, Barry. So Barry works with CGI and he is the ethics architect who balances the corporate's reputation like high wire act, right? He navigates high stakes compliance and transparency, ensuring that the ethics are not compromised. And he has a sharp eye on and a very steady hand when it comes to strategically working through the crisis. Barry, your experience would be extremely helpful for us as we navigate through the C-suite experience on how the governance plays a critical role, especially when SIAM and a lot of providers come in. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. I'm not sure that I'm necessarily the most important, but thank you very much for that, Neha. I'm looking forward to joining this esteemed international panel.
Great. So let's get started with our episode 1. The leadership perspective here. So in today's episode, we will be bringing in perspectives of personas from the offices of CIO, COO, Chief Governance Officers, Chief Procurement Officers, and what are the struggles that they face, right? So let's take the scenario of a Chief Operating Officer. Their key challenge is ensuring that the performance of the providers align with the business outcome. How does SIAM play a role in that? Let's take another example of CIOs. They lead the IT transformation all the time. And often they are challenged to prove the value of their spend in IT transformation against the value it will provide to the business. Chief governance officers, they face so many risk issues, especially managing the various providers and the type of contracts that they have to work with. And when it comes to contract, we cannot forget our Chief Procurement Office. They are the one who are managing variety of contracts, evolving landscape, and the new type of providers mushrooming in the cloud native AI quantum era that we are living in. So we are going to address all of these persona as we go through the questions, and our guests will help us address some of them. So let's get started with some of the questions here. Adam, if I may ask you, what was your first experience with SIAM?
Oh, great question, Neha. And I can talk for days on this, but we don't have that much time, so I won't for all those that are worried. My journey started in 2015. I landed in Qantas, pun intended, and had a really a strong service transformation program to deliver there. The experience was fairly poor for the end users. 7 different contact centers, 48 different IVR options. If you listen to the whole IVR, it'll take you 14 minutes. So a really friction-built service experience for the employees. So that was when I first became aware of service integration management, and from that, established single sources of truth and brought the whole service and supply community together to drive great outcomes for the airline. So that's my start there.
Oh, great. All right. And Alta, if I may ask, how was your first experience with SIAM?
Also a long story, which I'm not going to bore you with today. But actually, we started in 2008 when we won a big outsourcing contract. But then we were not aware of SIAM yet. So we battled that we create our own models based on ITIL, CMMI, COBIT. And then as we implemented this model, where we managed different services on behalf of the customer, we referred it to then as service chain management. And then until 2018, that was when we came across SIAM. And we were so happy because we really then had a framework where we can manage the different services of different service providers to provide value to our customers. And then we were then all trained, and our trainer is on the call as well. We were very privileged to have Ian as our trainer. And then the biggest value was that we started to realize the benefits of the word governance that's embedded in SIAM. And that is how we got to know about SIAM, and it added a lot of value to our lives.
Great. So it's so important to understand the piece that you mentioned here, right? The service chain management. So
Yes.
from a perspective of a COO, you see service integration across the vendor as
Yes.
building a chain of services that actually creates step-by-step progression for value to be brought in from the providers to the
Yes.
organization.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that term. It is very important for us to look at from the perspective of a COO, and I don't know why I'm calling it COO. That sounds interesting as well, but okay. And Adam, from Qantas experience that you shared, right, frictionless becomes extremely important because we work in various fragmented pieces within an organization, and then you multiply that by bringing in providers and vendors from outside, and that multiplies a lot of things. How do you make it frictionless is extremely important. Do you want to add a bit more about that experience?
A little bit more color, Neha, no problem at all. So for me, I think there's a really strong piece of clarity that's required between your supply side of your organization and the demand side of your organization. And bringing those two together through a connection against strategy and a connection of priority allows operational teams to do what they really love to do, which is deliver great results. The stronger you have the connection between your suppliers and your service partners, or whatever you want to call them, and how they make a difference to the business and how they make a difference to the end employee, that's what generates momentum. That's what generates value. That strong connection between, I'm doing something that I know I'm adding value to. People want to do that on a day-to-day basis. They get up out of bed to try and add value, to try and make things better. So that's generally how you go about that, get that strong connection.
Great. Okay, so if I may ask, Alta, when you were bringing in SIAM, was there a tipping point when you said that now is the right time when we can bring in SIAM and we can make an investment? What was that key value that you saw in a SIAM?
So I would say when we realize that we can add value to the customer in terms of the services that they're contracting a service provider for. Remember, it is so expensive for a customer to pay a service provider, and then to make sure that this service is provided to add value, not only line per line what's in the contract, but to take that contract, what they expect from us, and then to implement it smoothly into their business so that there's no confrontation, that there is a continual maturity of the processes and the practices, and building a relationship with all the service providers, providing that one service to the customer. Remember, SIAM is also scalable. We don't implement the full SIAM one shot. The customer doesn't have all the money. So they say, can you please just implement 2 or 3 of the processes or practices of SIAM, and then we build onto it. And I think when we realize that we can incrementally build onto SIAM for a customer once they see the value, that was a big thing for us to realize.
That's so beautifully said that, right? It's SIAM is just not the equation of SLAs. It's bringing process, practice, and people all together to incrementally achieve the success that we want to. And as we move forward, I just wanted to say that this is the podcast that we are doing today wouldn't be just me asking questions and our guests responding to it. We won't do that interview format. It's an open forum where we would interact, ask questions to each other. Feel free to ask questions if you have for me as well. And we will pick questions from the audience as well. So please keep popping in questions on the chat, and we will bring the questions to our esteemed guest panel here. Okay, so as we understood the perspective of the COOs, CPOs, and how they look at SIAM, let's try to also understand how does the organization looks at SIAM. So Ian, if I may ask you, what specific problems were you hoping SIAM would solve for the organization you worked with?
I think from my experience, the organizational C-suite, their executive are looking to drive revenue, cost containment, manage risk, and there is a huge amount of risk in dealing with multiple suppliers, internal or external. So I think one of the biggest misnomers that I've come across is that this SIAM framework operating model helps us to deal with our internal and external suppliers only, and makes the coordination of those suppliers to deliver a service to business or a client fairly seamless and transparent. The one thing a lot of people miss is that if it's like a swivel chair, if you swivel to the front client, that integrator layer is driven by adding value. That's its sole purpose, in my opinion, anyway. So how do we enable the business? Are we looking at the services and orchestrating them in the right way so they add value to business and the client? How are we driving revenue? How are we enabling the business to be successful? So, SIAM is not just about integrating suppliers. It's about enabling a business. And I think a lot of people do miss that second kind of part of the swivel chair, again, from my experience.
Yeah, it's so important. It is all about enabling the business, right?
Absolutely.
So if you can take us back to one of the customers where we have implemented SIAM, what were the biggest concern of the customer? What gave them sleepless nights in adopting the SIAM model?
Yeah, it was the investment. So again, from my experience, if you're going to transition to this SIAM operating model, it's kind of like it's a bell curve. It's going to take investment, to get the right functions and people, the right mindset, transition the suppliers, internal and external, into the operating model, because it's a very different way of providing service, if you get into the detail. But the one biggest problem they had was that it's going to take us quite a bit of money to establish this model before we start to see the costs and the costs come down and the value go up. So it's that realization, I think, like anything, that it takes a bit of investment and time and money and effort to get it in place before you start to realize the results. And I've seen a few SIAM implementations kind of get stopped because of that, that not realizing that is the road that we're going down, financially as well.
Yeah, so stopping the transformation too soon before we hit the value, right? Spoken like a true CIO, you need to wait for your investment to yield value.
Correct. But I think the other side of it as well, and I think some of the other guests might be able to pitch in here as well, is that, getting that senior management understanding and spending a bit of time with them to make them understand these things is a worthwhile investment in itself. So when it does start to materialize like that, then there are really not too many surprises. It's part of the plan, actually. It's part of the investment.
Right. So on one side, you're looking at investing and bringing SIAM into the organization. And on the other side of the swivel chair is the variety of vendors and service providers that you're dealing with. And with the landscape that we are in, we have variety of contracts to work through, variety of vendor relations to manage, and they can be in hundreds or even thousands at some point in time. So from a procurement officer's perspective, Adam, if I may ask you, how easy or difficult it is, and if you can add a few examples of the biggest challenges in managing the vendors.
It's a great question, and I think Ian touched on it as well when he was talking about the supply community of internal and external service providers all needing to work together. Look, if you'll hear from contract managers and commercial managers, contracts have to be harmonized. All the contracts have to be the same to get this SIAM thing off and running. And Alta, it underlined one of the important points around incremental change is incremental for a reason. It generates momentum, and from that you get greater value, greater benefit, greater visibility and transparency, and more value on top, and the momentum builds. So look, for me, there's a couple of things here. I would slightly and respectfully disagree with commercial and contract managers who say every contract has to be the same. And traditionally, we see thousands of KPIs and thousands of SLAs all built into these unified, harmonized contracts, expecting every service provider to deliver what's in the contract. I would slightly change that and say, you know what, let's do the hard work as the customer. Let's get our clarity in regards to what's important now for us. What does good look like for us? And how do we celebrate that common purpose, that common vision, and the language that we build as a cohesive team to help shape and guide all of our operational people into delivering what's important. And we do that through making sure that contracts and the contracting community in the customer are connected to that purpose and that vision and that language. And we take the opportunity of category management and the cycle of contracts, and we make the tweaks and changes that we need to make sure that the suppliers coming in have an understanding of what we're doing and what the supply side looks like. They're connected to priority, they're connected to the strategy, and they're starting to build momentum around them delivering in that SIAM methodology, that way of working. As Ian spoke about, it's a different type of mindset. It's a different type of energy level. We're not talking about transactions now. We will have transaction suppliers, no doubt, but we're talking about valued service outcomes, and we're talking about valued service partners that are delivering instrumental value to the business. And the better we connect that outcome and the demand and the business celebration of doing that great, the faster we get momentum and the greater clarity we get on the performance of all service providers, be they internal or external.
Yeah.
So that's the big point there in regards to some of the challenges as well. Big thing about vision, purpose, and language.
Vision, purpose, and language, and that's what you keep continuously driving with the supply chain as well. And so in this entire piece, I think there is a very relevant question coming in from the audience as well. And Ian, if you want to take this, the question is from Simon, and his question is, can you tell us in what ways SIAM did not deliver what you expected, for better or worse?
Neha, can I make a suggestion? I think Barry needs to take this one.
Super. Okay.
Okay, Barry, go for it.
Sorry, what was the question?
I'll ask that again. No problem. So the question is, can you tell us in what ways SIAM did not deliver what you expected, for better or worse? This is a question coming in from the audience.
I'll be honest, I think it has always delivered what I expected, because, I'm a very big proponent of, prepare for the worst and prepare for the best. So SIAM has never delivered something that I've not expected, because I'm somebody, as a chief governance officer, you've got to prepare for and to expect every outcome. And if you prepared for and expected every outcome, you're kind of ready when something happens. I guess you could be really, really outlandish and say that, I've never prepared for asteroid impact as part of SIAM. but pretty much everything else I have done. So that would be my advice, would be, run every scenario you can think of through your SIAM governance, get those use cases running when it doesn't matter.
Right. Makes sense. So talking about governance, we have so many regulatories coming in at the geography level, at the industry level, and all the providers needs to align to the regulatories and the compliance requirements. So from a chief governance officer's perspective, how do we manage that?
Yeah, to be honest, governance is one of those things that it's an afterthought. It's for me, it almost should be the first thing that you think about. Where does your information need to flow? What decisions have you got to make? So before you choose tools, processes, roles, etc., 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 you've absolutely got to understand those decisions you've got to make. Now, I would always say more is less. Eventually with governance, because you always build governance thinking, what's it actually going to be like once we get up and running? But the reality is that you need a lot more governance and to do a lot more early on when you're not used to it. It's easier to take governance away than it is to add it in, because normally when you're adding it in, it's the result of getting something very badly wrong. When you're adding governance in. So, quite often my advice is, let's just take a governance forum in SIAM.
Mm-hmm.
If it's due to be every 6 months when we're mature, then run it every 2 months when we're starting up, just to get used to running it, how it works, and get things up and running. You might not have a lot to discuss initially, but you get used to the meeting, you get used to the people, you get used to the governance. Then if you want to take some of the governance away, do that at a later stage.
Okay, great. So you said very wisely that we need to look at the tools and the processes, and it's very easy to take governance away, but it's extremely difficult to bring that in, right? And
yeah.
I think one piece that I would take away from this conversation is more is less. So when it comes to governance, it's extremely important that we start bringing that in right at the beginning when you start designing the SIAM. From designing, if we talk about implementation, were there any surprising challenges that you have faced when deploying SIAM that you might have not anticipated before?
Probably, I guess that's still to me, Neha. People. People is the biggest, the most complex, the most illogical part of any SIAM implementation. Most of the rest of it is complicated. People are complex. People do crazy things. People make crazy decisions. That's the most difficult part of SIAM. And the bit that if anything's going to throw you a curveball, it will be the people.
Interesting perspective. Yeah. So it's the people who we need to ensure that we are listening to them carefully and ensuring that they are aligned with what we intend to do. Let me take perspective of Alta here. So Alta, when we are talking about those unexpected things that may happen to an organization when a change come in from SIAM, how do you deal with it?
Interesting, the discussion up to so far, but what I experience when we implement SIAM, initially, the service providers that we have to manage on behalf of the customer, they are very antagonistic towards the SIAM organization or the contract that was now, if we now won the contract. But in the end, we, the service providers, got along better than what we got along with the customer. So we built such a good relationship based on having the same processes, the same practices, providing consistent reporting. That governance component that Barry spoke about, one of the most critical success factors is building a meeting framework from the beginning. Rather too many than too little. And then you can reduce it over a period. That that SIAM referred to as structural elements. From my side, I think that's probably one of the most important factors by starting and implementing SIAM is building those structural elements in the beginning.
Huh? That's important, right? So more or less, and bring the cultural and structural elements right at the beginning, and ensure that across the service providers, they all get along on the structural element.
Yes.
And that now takes me back to the point of people being the most unpredictable one. So this is highly influenced by the culture as well, whether it's internal or external. Barry, Alta, do you want to share some colors on how do we influence the culture? Barry, if you want to take this one.
Yeah. So influencing culture is, a lot of it is about leadership and leading by example. I don't think it makes a difference whether it's SIAM or whether it's whether it's the local social circle or a knitting club or whatever that you're leading. It's leading by example. And that's a massive thing about when it comes to changing culture. I think the other thing as well is to maintain momentum. Now, momentum, if we all remember back to our kind of school physics, which is a long time for some of us to remember back to, physics is all about speed and mass. The momentum is all about speed and mass. So it's not just about the leader going quickly and expecting others to keep up. Actually going slower, but with more people, can actually have physics momentum, can give you that physical momentum. So in terms of changing culture, don't necessarily be worried about speed, be more worried about momentum.
Going back to the basics of physics. Thank you so much. That's such an easy way for us to remember, right? And it's very basic that probably we do or do not do, of how do we keep the momentum by bringing the key elements that you just now mentioned. And I know, Ian, you want to add something, so go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo, a lot of what Barry's saying about the importance of the people. And one of the great things that we've included in the framework is a specific thread on organizational change management. And, the transition to a SIAM operating model and way of work is very mindset and behavioral in nature. Yeah, we can all sit about and talk about contracts changing and so on, but I totally agree. It's very human centric. And in my experience, again, programs and projects that have been tasked to deliver this transition, if they have a purposeful, intended individual or group of people who are there to look after people, it makes a huge difference, especially if they're trained in organizational change management. So if there was ever anything I would make sure was built into the project, it would be that, without a doubt.
Great. And when we are talking about this transition, do you believe we can do a full transition or implementation of SIAM in one go, or does it keeps evolving?
Yeah, look, from my perspective, it's, it evolves, it's incremental. To try and do something in a big bang approach nowadays, more of an agile kind of approach. I said the A word. Am I allowed to say the A word? No. It's kind of an agile, incremental, make improvement, learn, make improvement, learn. It takes time, but yeah, it's like you say, the momentum is very, very important. Speed, is an individual organizational thing, but momentum, I agree totally with Barry. 100%.
Very wise words. Very wise words. Thank you so much. So let me take some questions from the audience here. So the question here is, does the service desk have to be part of SIAM solution? That's coming from Henk. Anybody who would like to take that question?
Yes, of course it does. How are you gonna communicate in and out of that? Now, when you look at the SIAM best practice that we're currently the body of knowledge that we're currently looking at, then there are many options. A lot of people, I'll lay my neck on the block here. A lot of people prefer the integrator and the service desk to be the same organization. I'm absolutely and totally firmly in that camp, and I'm prepared to disagree with you before we decide I'm right. No. No, but certainly for me, the service desk is absolutely integral to SIAM, and you can't work without it.
Can I just add something to that?
Yes.
I totally agree. I'm in Barry's camp. There will be service desks in the environment. There will be multiple. All the external providers are likely to have a service desk. So the question really is, who's going to be that single point of contact facing off to the users and client base? And that has to be built into the model. And I'm with Barry. I mean, even in the body of knowledge, it might say it has to be a separate kind of supplier. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, it's guidance, but I would put it in the integrator layer without a shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely. And that's the touch point where you start influencing the experience of the users, whether it's the employee of the organization or their end users. So,
Absolutely.
so important. Yep.
Neha,
Yep.
if I may as well.
Sure.
If the customer or the retained organization chooses not to put the service desk or the service desks and the service integrator together, then the strong connection is feedback. Feedback from the customer, engagement, satisfaction, effort is a thing that needs to be measured as well. How much effort did it take for the end user to get their thing done? So that's key. If you don't have the service desk in with the SIAM community in that service integrator role, then feedback is absolutely the key driver of the connection piece there.
Okay, super. And have a very interesting question coming in again from Hank. Thank you so much. What are your advice on integration services to be retained by the customer or from an external supplier? Very interesting perspective. Yep.
Look at capability first.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely start with the capability of the people. Instead of thinking that's this organization, that's that organization, that's that organization, look at the capability as a whole of the people that you've got, and then make decisions about what's
100%.
going to be retained. Because you could end up splitting it into two parts and find that the part A can do part B's job better than them, and part B can do part A's job better than them, because you've mixed up the capabilities. Look at it as a whole. Look at your capabilities first.
100%.
Interesting perspective there. And there is a question which is very interesting for me, and let me read through this question very clearly. Starting with SIAM from scratch needs stakeholders and budget. What were the key points in the business cases that triggered you to begin SIAM implementation? And then I'll tell you why I said that this is important. This is such basic piece for us to be very clear when we are talking strategically as well as tactically. How do we implement SIAM? Because unless we understand the value of what SIAM would bring to the organization, it's really difficult for us. So unless you know the end goal, it's difficult for us to even take steps in the right direction. Important question. I would let the panelists react to it, but I also want to highlight that this is the key topic for our next episode coming in. So tune into the next episode where we will do a much deeper dive into this topic of how do we actually bring in the right business cases in front of the organization. But I'll let the panelists react to that question now. Okay, we'll talk in the next episode.
No. I tell you what, I could probably do it in 4 words: manage risk, save money. There we go. Yeah, and once most business cases, once you get to risk or money, people are not bothered after that. You need to stop asking you, what if you're doing your 5 whys, once you get to risk or money, stop, because nobody cares after that.
Interesting.
Value.
Absolutely. All right. So I know we have so many things to talk and we have very limited time. Can I talk about some golden tips that you would want to give for SIAM? So to start with, Barry, if I can ask you, what is the key advice you would want to give to SIAM organizations when they're implementing SIAM?
Sort your people out first. Yeah, would be absolutely the one that, even if they don't know their final roles, try to get you. If people are worried about whether they're going to be 2P'd, if people are worried about whether they're going to have a job at the end of all of this, then try as best you can to sort that out. I've been in one particular SIAM implementation, and the people was the longest pole in the tent. It was the most difficult to sort out. And if you don't sort that first, nobody can keep their head on trying to transition to a SIAM or transform to a SIAM model if they're worried about how they're going to pay the mortgage next week, next month.
Great. Adam, do you want to address how do we sort people?
Look, I think people are the foundational part. Absolutely agree with Barry. I also think there's part of the organizations that you need to make sure are on the same page. So when procurement go out to market and buy something, you need to make sure your BAU people and your operational people absolutely agree or in lockstep in what they actually get, so that you don't have a situation where sourcing comes through, they've got a project to do the work, and the BAU team are sitting there going, that's not how we work. That's not what we do. I don't want it like that. I want it like this. So all of a sudden you have murkiness in regards to what was required, what's been paid for, what's been negotiated, and what's being built. So that's probably my number one tip. After the OCM piece, which Barry has so eloquently described, make sure that people are on the same page in regards to what was bought and what's being put in.
Interesting. All right. So let me ask this question differently to Alta. So Alta, if you have to select the SIAM provider, what would be the top tips that you would give to an organization on how to select the right fit of a SIAM provider for your organization?
So we are bound by what the customer writes in their RFPs. But what we then do is we reply in such a way so that the customer can see what it is that we want to achieve by providing them with a SIAM service. Sometimes they don't even realize that they're asking for a SIAM service, but we will tell them, or we will illustrate with the value that we can provide. So I believe, there must always be a golden thread through this whole providing of IT services on behalf of the customer. Now, it gives the customer a much more peace of mind when they know there is a suitable, qualified team that can provide this service for them. And I call an integrated service a service as much as you get a server service, a network service. So we fall into a separate stream of a service. So they must select a SIAM provider that's experienced in SIAM services, just like server services, network services. What tool are you fluent in and certified? That is what they must look for as well.
Okay, sure, great. Ian, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, look, the people thing's been covered, so I'm not going to go there apart from exec buy-in. If the exec are not bought into this, you're all wasting your time. And Tom, target operating model. So those two are, in my experience, again, key. You know, the people want to see, how does it look? How does it fit together? It's all linked to OCM, but having a clear operating model in terms of what are we going to retain? What do we expect of the integrator, etc., is another important design element, so to speak, business case element. So yeah, I think I'd throw that one in there as well. But the execs are key, without a doubt.
Oh, fabulous discussion. And I'm sad that we're running out of time, and I look forward to our discussion in the next episode. But it's so important that we ensure that the people are sorted. It is so important that we understand the governance perspective of more being less. We also need to understand of the building of service chain management, right? And how do we keep the momentum on? So there's so many golden nuggets that I've got from the session today. While I recall all these golden nuggets, please ensure that the audience specifically, if you have any questions that is not being addressed, leave those questions. We will try to address that in the next episode. But I'm so happy I got so many insights, and that practically brings us to the end of today's episode. And I hope we all enjoyed learning the key pieces that come from the perspective of the executive suite of an organization. And as we learned the impact that it gets conveyed to the organization and the executive, we also need to learn on how do we present and articulate the value of SIAM to the businesses. And that episode is coming in on 15th of April. You would get the QR code to register into that. And please do not forget to join the Scopism community as well to participate in all the fun things that's happening under the SIAM sky. With that, thank you so much for joining us today. See you next time.